All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Joey Ragona. Joey, welcome, man. So awesome to have you here.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for this. This is so amazing. I was jazzed all week, getting ready for this.
Well, I've been looking forward to it as well. And so, I know we were talking a little bit before we hit the record button, and you and I met because Giovanni Marsico had invited me to participate in this Zoom thing he was doing for some of his folks, and a memory popped up on my Facebook feed this week, and made me realize like wow, that was a year ago this week, and I'm like, time flies. and that's how you and I connected, because you were on that event. You were part of that event, and we've kind of, we've done a few things you and I have ever since. And what's kind of cool is, like, Joey, you're just one of those guys that I just really appreciate you and who you are, and what you stand for, the way you show up. You're just one of these guys who's making a real impact in this world. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, because I know we are going to be able to impact other people when other people hear your story and get to know you a little bit. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of start off by letting you set a little bit of context. So, let the listeners know, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do. We'll just start there, Joey.
Okay. I'll try to make it a real short thing, because I've been an entrepreneur since I was born. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, so it was always part of me to have this entrepreneur has always been in my blood. And the people I serve now, so I'll jump back and forth here, but the people I serve now are heart-centered entrepreneurs, change makers, true people that really want to have a mission in the world. And I know that sounds like a cliche, like everybody else is doing, which is totally cool too. But what happens for me is the people that I serve are people that, unfortunately, when they get to me, they've crashed, right? They're in the hole. They've tried a lot of things, nothing's working. And you and I both know that too many people leave their dreams behind because they've been through certain things that don't work out. They hit the dip, or whatever you want to call it, the crash, and then they bail. And that's unfortunate. And the people that I'm serving are the ones who are crashed, and they say, you know what, I'm just going to push myself up from the canvas here. I need guidance. I need help. I need someone who understands me. And that's where I enter their world. And I help them, those change makers, pull them out of the hole. And this is, Gio's analogy. I love it. So I'm going to borrow it from him. I pull them out of the hole, and then we start climbing the mountain that they can see, but they're still in that hole. So that's kind of what I do. And it's usually around coaches and practitioners and people that have a mission to serve their corner of the world in a heart-centered way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that drives me, because there are people who are just about money, and money is not the end result. Money actually helps us impact. And I had a limiting belief about money too, because it was like, well, I don't want to be a rich person who doesn't really care about the world. And I've had those associations and things. And I just wasn't looking at money as the important thing. Gio, again, helped me with the realization that money actually impacts us more. And what I figured out for myself is that there are two different people in my world, which are money-driven or mission-driven. And money-driven people obviously are all about the money. They don't care really much about the people that they're helping or the thing. Yeah. And so they're always after money. And then I realized the mission-driven people like you and I, we actually need more money than the money-driven people, because the money drives the mission further. Yeah. And that, as soon as I put that into my head, it was like, no, I do need to make a whole bunch of money here. Yes. And it's not just about me, because it's more about the mission. Yeah. Does that give a little bit of context?
Absolutely. That's huge. And, it's very interesting, because I don't share this with a lot of people. People close to me definitely know. But, in doing the work that I do, I really started taking off in 2017. As far as like kind of being this connector and facilitating relationships that impact millions of lives. I started doing it in 2017. I hosted these initial two events at my home right here, in fact, right on the other side of this wall. one in August of that year, one in September of that year, 1 month later, and 15 entrepreneurs flew in from around the country to attend each of those events. And from that event, my goal with those is like, I just want to get these amazing entrepreneurs together, and I want to facilitate these connections and relationships. And I just want to kind of, hold this space for them. And I know if I get the right people in the room, I know something magical will happen. And I just want to figure out how to facilitate that. And it did. It totally did. In fact, so much so that at the end of each of those events, I just said to the participants, I was like, hey, if you got value from being here, I would love to take an active role in helping you experience more of what you just experienced here over the last couple of days. And what I would like for my role in that is, I'd like to ride with you for the next year, and we'll just work closely together. And I would like $25,000 for my role in that. And if that would be of value to you, then I would love to talk with you about that. And at that first event, and actually at the very first event, I offered it at 22,000, and 6 out of the 15 said yes to that.
Oh man.
And so in between that and the next event, I was talking with one of the guys who was coming to the next event, and he knew I was doing this, and he asked me, he's like, Kev, how did it go at the first event? And I'm like, Mark, I said, it went amazing. And I was like, and I made the offer, and I was like, and 6 out of the 15 people said yes at 22,000 each. And I said, I think I might have, maybe it was a little bit too cheap. And he's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, you know what? I said, I'm thinking next month. I was like, I'll offer it at 25,000. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, Kev. He's like, I'm in, because he was coming to the next event. He's like, I'm in,
Wow.
and I'm just going to let you know right now. For me, there's not really much difference between 22,000 and 25,000. If I'm going to give you 22, I'll give you 25. He's like, it makes no difference in my mind, and I doubt it will for them either. And so,
Wow.
so at the next event, did the same thing, offered the again, 6 more out of 15. Actually, we had 14 at the second event because one guy, Scott Olford, couldn't make it. And so we had 14, but 6 more people said yes at $25,000 from the second.
Wow.
And so on the surface, all of that sounds so amazing. And it was. In that moment, it was so amazing. And over the next 2 years, from August of 2017 until August of 2019, 35 people in total said yes to that offer at $25,000, and the initial 6 at 22,000. And
Wow.
come by September of 2019, Joey, man, what you were just talking about, I had hit this really low spot in my life. And people are right now are probably thinking, what the hell, Kev? What are you talking about? Sounds like you're on top of the world. Here's the deal. Most of these entrepreneurs were friends of mine that I had known for a long time. And granted, a lot of this was stuff I was telling myself, BS stories that I was telling myself, but I didn't feel like I was serving them to the best of my ability. I didn't feel like I was delivering the kind of results that they really wanted. I also was managing 35 people and having all these one-on-one phone calls. And I'm just like, oh, I was like, and I felt like I was letting them down. I felt like that I wasn't getting the kind of results that I wanted from them. I felt completely overwhelmed time-wise. And I remember being on a flight home from Texas, wishing the damn plane would just crash because at least my wife would have the insurance money. And
Wow.
I was just like, I was in such a low spot. And and the thing is, what had happened is I had just built, I had this gift, I had this thing that I was really good at, but the model that I was using was just completely incongruent with who I was and the way I really wanted to show up. And I had to discover a model that was in alignment with me and that would just allow me to show up at my best, and also just allow me to serve and get results in a way that just made me feel really good. And we did discover that model. We did. Unfortunately, I had people around me, but so when you're saying that this is the Joey, I didn't know that that was the kind of work that you did, but I can tell you, I knew you worked with entrepreneurs and all that, but to have you articulate that we've never talked about it before,
Right. Right.
where you articulated that I work with people who are entrepreneurs who are doing their thing, but have gotten in this hole. And I'm like, shit, I can tell every day I was there, and I look at what's going on right now and what's been happening over the last 3 years and where I'm at now. And I'm like so excited and engaged and like I'm excited for the people that I get to work with and that I get to serve. And I'm excited by where we're going. And I'm excited, for just to be on this journey and stuff. And I would imagine that I'll hit another spot at some point because we do go through these cycles. We go
All the
through
time.
cycles,
Yeah.
and it's not like life's going to be all unicorns and rainbows going forward, and that we ain't gonna the shit ain't gonna hit the fan and stuff ain't gonna happen. It does. Entrepreneurs, we go through these cycles, and
100%.
and I can tell you that no matter how successful somebody is, we go through these cycles. And so for one, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing what you just did, because I didn't even know that that was the work you did. But I'm glad that I know now, and I'm glad that we can let it, because there's probably going to be people listening to this and go, "Holy cow, Kev, I need to talk with Joey." And
Thank
so
you, man.
thank you for that. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome. And I want to jump in. I want to piggyback off of what you just said, because there's two things I want to point out here. One is what you just finished saying, that with these cycles. And when I was in my first mastermind, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, it was John Assaraf that showed us this model of, the sigmoid curve, right? And where I'm talking about, where my people are, is in that first dip. They go down to the dip and they're crashing there. But that's what I learned from that mastermind. Was he was saying that, the stuff happens, and then we're on our way up. Finally, we get through the challenges or whatever, and we're on our trajectory upward to the next peak, and we're celebrating. It's really important to celebrate, right? The small wins, the big wins. But then he said, right about halfway or maybe 3/4 up, he said, this is where we start preparing for the next crash in the dip. Doesn't matter how long it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to be, but we're preparing ourselves for it. We're not negative, right? Because John, he's all right, positivity. We're not being about negative, but he goes, you got to be aware, because it's the cycles always happen. And it just changed everything for me. I'm like, wow. And then I realized as well, from my experience, I've been coaching now for like 10 years or so. And I realized that when we begin something, this is my perception of it, when we begin a new thing, we think we're on our way up. But I think that we're starting right at the top of the sigmoid curve, or the top of the peak. And we're really on our way down to the first crash, to the first challenge, the first thing that the universe sends our way to say, are you prepared for this? Are you willing to go through this? And once I realized that, it was, okay, who can I serve? And it's the people that are willing to go through that crash. It's the people that are, I have a mission to serve, and I need to get up the mountain. And here's the funny thing, Kev. Like, I know my clients so well, in terms of the dream client, or the avatar, however you want to look at it, the persona. And the funny thing is that when people come to me, no matter how they perceive me as being different, or maybe a little bit cooler or whatever, they still distrust me, even if they kind of trust me. And I totally get that. And this is where the whole heart-centered marketing system that I've created comes in. There's 3 pillars that I want to share that drive this whole thing. One is to curate the tribe, to curate the right tribe, the right people. The second one is serve, don't sell. And the third one is respect their timeline. And the only reason, there's a few reasons why they're there, but it pertains to what we just talked about. Because I know that people are coming into my world, they're more than likely financially stressed. They don't trust a lot of the other coaches or the industry or whatever it is. And even though Joey's saying a couple different things, maybe there's something beyond the curtain, right? Maybe there's something behind the curtain I don't see yet. So if I was a regular person and trying to say, well, look, I'm different and everything, just go buy my thing and let me show you, I know that it would I would be able to prove it, but I don't want to do that. I want to respect them. I want to show them that I'm different. You can see right behind me, like my sign, we do different. And it's all about that. Is like, how can I show people and prove to them that what I do is different? Because I assume that everybody coming into my world assumes I'm like everybody else. And I want to show them that you're cared for, you're loved, there's support, there's guidance, and there's insight here, even though you're not paying me. And that's okay. And whether or not you pay me, in the future or not, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to serve as best as I can. And if there's a time in the future that we can work together, which is respecting your timeline, then maybe that'll happen.
Mhm.
And that's my whole entire mindset of it all. So, and that's helped me project my business like never before.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That is really powerful. That is really powerful. Well,
Thank you.
we have definitely set some context. And man, even myself, I got to discover stuff about you that even though we've had conversations before, I didn't know. So that is awesome. So
Thank you.
okay, so now that we've done that and we've got a little bit of context set, I'm gonna shift gears and I'm gonna
Okay.
reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So Joey, have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person? And Joey, I'm just like really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
This was a hard one because the first person that comes to mind was, we just talked about Giovanni, and I just want to honor him.
Yeah.
uh, Giovanni is like such a huge impact in my life. So I just want to honor him. But I also want to step back to 2012, and it was Greg Habstritt and Karusha Assef, I'm sorry. And without Greg, I wouldn't be here. No doubt in my mind. I even asked my wife this question. I said, who comes to mind when I ask you this question? She immediately said Greg. And the funny thing about this was I was in the real estate investing world. That's where Greg was as well. And I still am, but I mean, that's kind of a side burner thing. And anyway, he had this mastermind, Simple Wealth. And one day, if it was around 2012 or something, one of my friends, Wade, who was in his mastermind group, the VIP, reaches out and says, Greg and Karush want to talk to you. And I had no idea who Karush was, by the way. Karush was his partner, right? His business partner there. And they've been watching you and they want to talk to you. I'm like, what about? So, well, we got this mastermind thing going on. And I really didn't understand what it was. I kind of knew what a mastermind was because, the Think and Grow Rich and that, and it really didn't really get it. I'm like, okay. And so Karush reaches out. We have a discussion about growing the business. And this was on a Monday. I'll never forget it. And we're talking away. And he's talking about the things that he can help with. And my whole problem back then, Kevin, which was I just need help to organize my stuff, my desk. Like my desk is still a mess, as you can see it. Like that's what I need somebody for. And I'm going to pay somebody, multiple thousands of dollars to help me organize my desk. But as you know, that's not where it goes. But so it was a very significant investment for me. I wasn't making a lot of money. It was okay, but it was a significant investment. And I go, this all sounds great, Karush, but I'm going to have I need to think about this. I need to think about this thing, right? And he goes, Joey, this is the thing for you. He wasn't pushing me at all. He was so, so great. Anyway, I said, let me think about this and let me get back to you if that's okay. He says, okay, cool. I hang up the phone. I go to my wife and tell her what's going on. She's like, wow, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, because I've been buying courses left and right, Kevin,
Okay.
And I said, I've never ever invested in me. And I think I'm going to do that. So I took a line of credit on my house. Like I'm just one of those crazy entrepreneurs. I didn't have the money, took a line of credit on my house, called Cruz back. He was expecting me to call him back in a couple of days. Called him back like the next day, the next morning, said, I'm in. And that was the first move. And then the second move was that he said, okay, your first test is to get to Denver on Friday. I think it was on the Friday or it was the next Friday, but I'm pretty sure it was that week. And I'm telling you this story because it's so impactful. because I was this guy who never did that kind of stuff, right? I was like, I'm not going to go out into these things, and especially alone, right? I had to put my big boy pants on and get on a plane by myself and navigate all the way through it. I always had a companion, my wife or somebody, right? I just, and it may sound funny to people listening to this, but that's just who I was. Like, oh my gosh, I got to do all this thing myself. And I got to do it in like 2 days. So I did it. It was like, I got there, got to Denver, and I was like, wow. I walk in and now I'm in the VIP, and it's a completely different vibe. You've been in VIPs forever in Mastermind. So the vibe was completely different. That is where I met all of the people, like most of the experts and amazing people that that's where they were. I had no idea who these people were. The Eben Pagans, the Jim Quicks, like you name them, they were there. And Amish Shaw, like all these people were there, and I had no idea who they were. And so we went to the event, and then we had a VIP thing in Denver for U2, went to this concert. And again, it's a mixture of all of these people. Kevin, I regret that day. I don't regret the day. I regret the fact that I was so this introvert person that I wouldn't go out and speak to anybody. We were in VIP rooms, like in hotel rooms, with all of these amazing people that I had opportunity to talk to, but I didn't talk to anybody. The only person I knew was John Assaraf. I didn't even go to speak to him. But here's the funny thing. Prior to that, 2007 was when I decided I'm going to change my mindset, because it was always like, how's it going? Well, same day, different crap, right? Mindset. So in 2007, I took John's course. I bought John's course, having it all, still remember what it is. And I studied that and I changed my mindset. Lo and behold, a few years later, John is actually a part of this mastermind. He wasn't he was like a regular guest. Mm-hmm. It just blew my mind about manifestation, or whatever you want to call it, laws of attraction. And that's the only person I knew. So I went into the mastermind, and immediately when I saw it, or sat in, I didn't know what it was about. There was 15 people in the room, whatever. And I immediately knew that this was my destiny. This is what I was built to do. Like, I could jump into people's world. I understand what their problems are. I'm a great person. I didn't know it back then. I got better at coaching. I'm still getting better, but I can do this thing. This is what I want to do. And so that's what brought me into coaching, like right away. And I just modeled what Greg was doing. And so it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have met all these people. Do you have any input here that you want to ask a question? Because I have a couple more things I want to.
I have absolutely zero input. I want to just let you share.
Okay. So when it came to John, he's another person that really changed my life in terms of both parts. Like the 2007, he didn't know. And then I was, again, so afraid, because John was part of this. He would come in there regularly. And I said to Greg, I want to talk to John. Is it okay if I do that? Would you be able to ask him this question? And I was asking Greg to ask John, and he's like, why don't you just go do this? Like, this is where I was. I was so afraid to approach people. So I finally did. And I said to John, look, actually, let me step back, because this was the second mastermind, because we only met 4 times a year. Okay. So the first time I went from 0 to like 15 people, like right away. No, I'm sorry. That was the second time. The first time I was there, I want to share something with you and with your audience about a mindset. When we were filling out the prep form to go there, I remember it like it was yesterday. I wrote on the prep form, I don't know if I should be in this room. And secondly, I don't want to disappoint anybody. That was the mindset I went in to that mastermind the very first time. Not only that, but I'm sitting there in the mastermind. It was my turn, because I was around like the last person, but my turn. And I sat there all mastermind. I don't even know if Greg knows this, but I sat there with my arms crossed, thinking to myself, tell me something I don't know. What am I here for? Tell me something I don't know. Really bad attitude. And so came to me, and it was my turn. And I had my prep form of what I wanted to talk about, which I can't remember what it was, but as you know, it never goes where you think it's going to go. And there was all kinds of questions. And I was deflecting everything. Like, no, 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 right? And as you know, when you're on the hot seat, you're pretty much always you're in defensive mode sometimes. For me, it was like all the time. I was defensive mode. And Greg says to me, he goes, look, Joey, I don't know what the answer is here, but I can tell you this. You are where you are because of the decisions you've made and have not made. And I don't know what those are yet, but I would just want you to think about that. And that was basically the last thing he said to me in that 50-minute session. And I was mad. I was like, dude, what did I pay for? Like, you didn't tell me how to organize my desk. You didn't tell me productivity tips. And I was so angry. I never really understood it until it, over the course of the next couple of months, thinking about what was going on, it finally hit me. Like, they're trying to dig further into like, what are the real problems here? And I went back to the second one and we started talking about something else, or whatever I was talking about. And I had my company, my father's company, and there was a sale going on. I was selling my portion of the company, and it was hindering for months and months and months. And I was in a very hard financial situation. And anyway, long story short, they were pointing toward that thing to make that decision, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'll deal with that, but this is what I want to do. I'm building the business over here. And they were so brilliant at being so focused on, you need to fix this in order to grow. And it was the hardest decision I ever made, which was basically letting go of, $100,000 or so of money that was in a line of credit, and just stopping it. And it was amazing. It was a really hard decision because I had to go back to my wife and said, listen, we're ending this thing and we're going to be out $100,000. She goes, what do you mean? Like in the investment on the paper? I go, no, actual money. We're just going to be out. So it was a very hard decision. And then my business began to just take off from there because I focused on the coaching part of it. And so that was like the second time coming in. That's when I asked John, I go, this is what I want to do. I want to grow my business. And I want to ask you two questions because you know how John's brilliance is, like what he's done in his life, right? Growing the businesses and everything that he did. And I said, I want to ask people or my potential clients and help them with two things, one on the personal side and one on the business side. What are the things that I should ask them? What is one question on each of those that I should ask? He said, on the business side, you want to have people who play in the thing that you hate to do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was a completely different directive of just delegation, mm-hmm. right? Play in the thing. And I'll never forget those words, play. And so I still say that to everybody else now. And he said, it's not easy to get those, but he goes, the way I built my business was because I have those people, the people that play in the stuff that I just hate to do. I said, okay, great. What about the personal side? And he said, ask them what they're willing to trade their life for. And I'm telling you, it's right on my wall, right up here. If I could turn my camera around, it's sitting on my wall since that day. It's been up there for now, 11 years? What are you willing to trade your life for? And when I used to say that, I used to break down because it was so impactful. Because I took it as, at the end of your life, you're going to look back at everything that you do, like this moment right here. Am I willing to trade my life to be on this podcast for this hour, this 2 hours, to be with Kevin? Like, was it worth it? Am I willing to trade my life for that? And not only that, but the way I would approach people who are changing from things that they hated to do. In that case, it was people who were moving from a job and they wanted to start a business. And they would tell me the horror stories of getting up in the morning and all these things and driving to work and all these things that they would hate. And I said, okay, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do for the next thing. And you know how it goes, right? They're so afraid of making moves. What if, and what if? And I said, look, I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow, but what you're actually doing is you're choosing to trade your life for something that you hate. And that's how I took his advice and started applying it to the daily movement of what I do. Because I help people become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. And I have a thick skin and I have a passion to serve. My wife looks at me and says, I don't know how you do it. You talk about the same thing again and again and again, and you just won't let go. And I said, yeah, that's a superpower because I'm a Sicilian. I've got a hard head, right? But that's a superpower because I won't let go. You have to give up before I'll give up on you. And so
Wow.
that was the big catalyst for me. Now, there's a couple other pieces, but I just in case you want to interject here.
I just had this thought. Have you ever seen that movie? What was it called? With Kevin Costner. The he was a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. Have you ever seen that movie?
Oh, is that the one? I think I know what you're talking about.
And at the end of the movie, he's holding on to that guy,
Yeah,
and he's like, I won't let go, and he's like, I know you won't, and he's like, so the guy let go to save Kevin Costner because he knew Kevin Costner would never, like, and that is such a visceral feeling. And as soon as you said that, I immediately thought of that. And then, anybody who's never seen that won't get it. But if you've seen that movie, you've seen that scene, that's what you think of in that like somebody who, like what you described, Joey, you're just so committed to the people that you serve that you see so much in them. And yeah, I mean, I feel the same exact way about the people that I serve. These are not just, I mean, I've had this like little guiding principle, if you will, for a while now, that it's really simple, it's really basic, but it's like, would I invite this person into my home for dinner with my family and I? And if the answer is anything other than a resounding yes, then I got no business doing business with them. And that I've just been using that as my guiding principle for a while now, and I only accept clients and partners that I feel that way about, that feeling is there, and it makes it real simple, because if that feeling isn't there, I don't invite them to. There's no invitation ever extended, and it's really simple,
yes,
But if the feeling is there, if the emotion is there, if you just have that feeling, then an invitation gets extended, and whether they accept or not, that's totally up to them. Because they got to feel it too, and a lot of times, well, I won't say a lot of times, but sometimes when I feel the feeling and they don't accept the invitation, I'm like, oh man. It's
yeah,
not a feeling of like, oh shit, I lost out on the sale.
right,
It's a
right.
feeling of like, oh man, I'm not going to get to work with them right now, and like, well, maybe it's just not right timing. Maybe they'll come back later or whatever if there's room, whatever. But what you're talking about, Joey. It changes everything. And it's like it changes how we interact with people. It changes how people, how people feel when they're around us, when they're in our presence and stuff. And I mean, this is, I mean, this is one deep conversation that we've got into about relationships, but man, it's so powerful. It's so,
Thank you.
yeah.
It is, and to your point, Kevin, like I'll, the that's where kind of like my pillar 3 comes in, which is respecting their timeline, because I understand that it takes people sometimes to accept the invitation. I think one of my biggest superpowers is being able to see the future. I can see it in people. I can see where they need to go. And sometimes I may not have the entire steps for them, but if they're willing to walk with me, because I walk right beside them, and for us to figure it out together. I do have, it's not that I don't know anything, but I've, let's take some risks here. Let's look at what's going to happen here. Don't worry. I'll walk around that bend over there and then into that alley and see if there's anybody waiting to beat us up. And if there is, I'll come back and say, let's not go that way. So I'll lead that way. And so, but I'm so passionate about that part of it, that I can see the future for people, but at the same time, allowing them to make the choice of when and if they want to work with me to help them get there.
Yeah.
And then going back to what you just said about having people over for dinner. That's why I think why we align so much, because as I said, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and I grew up with this where people would be at my dinner table constantly. And this is the way my dad drove the business. And I grew up with this understanding of, in my mind, that there's only real 2 camps of belief, that you can be friends with your clients or you can't. And I'm in the friendship thing. You can be friends with your clients. And then there's the line where they both know when business starts and when it ends. Because I saw people at my dinner table almost every week I would see people who were over at our pool parties and birthday parties and all of that stuff. These are clients of my dad, not because he was woozing them. They were friends, and I could tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And here's why I'm sharing this story, not to only amplify what you just said, but a pivotal moment in my early teens, because I worked with my dad forever since I was, 10, 11 years old. And almost every week it felt like he would bring me into the office and say, "We're closing the doors. That's it. Like, don't even come in."
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it'd be the next day he would be up and running. And this is what happened over and over again. And like the impact on a 10-year-old, like you can imagine, like what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
And there's this one time, I think I was around 13 or 14. Again, it happened again. But this was really the worst part. Like it was the worst one ever. Like he was really like down. He was out. And he couldn't pay payroll. And one of his clients, never forget his name, Jimmy Jorgensen, paid the payroll so that my dad can keep going that extra day.
Wow.
That moment changed everything.
Wow.
So it was because of Jimmy. And Jimmy was a client, but he was a good friend.
Yeah.
So I believe that we could have a business that's based around that I can help you as a client, but let's go out as a friend too when the timing is right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of moments like, who got me here, Kevin.
Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share what you did, just share from your heart today. And I know a lot of people are, if they're listening to this going, dang, Kev, I really like this Joey guy. I like the way he shows up. I like what he said. I mean, how can they find out more about what you guys are doing and stuff, Joey?
I suppose, thank you for that opportunity. I mean, if they just go to the website, my website is strategicbusinessacademy.com. I know it's a long one, strategicbusinessacademy.com. You can find everything that I'm doing there and reach out to me if you want to, I'll give you an email if they want to connect with me on email.
Sure.
And that's at the same thing. It's a Joey at strategicbusinessacademy.com.
Awesome.
And I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody.
Awesome. Well, Joey, once again, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I just feel so awesome right now because I got to get some more insight into what you actually do. I mean, we've talked about stuff, we've had conversations, I've participated in stuff, but I have a much better understanding now, which is way cool, and I'm glad for that. And so, well, Joey, thanks again.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you, and excited to share this interview with folks because I know it's going to be so impactful. So thank you.
I appreciate you, Kevin. Thank you so much for this. And you know how much I honor you and love the work that you do. And I'm just so grateful for this. So I can't even describe how this makes me feel. So thank you so much.
Well, you are so welcome. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.